No mai haere mai whakatau mai, kia ora and welcome along to this traffic subcommittee meeting on the 1st of September 2022. I'd like to welcome everyone to the last traffic meeting of the triennium. There's no members attending via Zoom, so I will skip over that bit. And we'll move into our opening karakia, which is on, the emergency procedures are on the screen if you're not familiar with them. Please just take the lead of any of the council staff or councillors in the building. Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 1, the opening karakia. Please join me on page 3, and I think we will bring it up on screen as well. Whakakatako hei ki te uru, whakatako ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hu, ti hei mauri ora. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, which is apologies. I've received apologies from Kerry. I'm happy to move that. Seconder. Councillor Shaw, and also just noting that Glenda Barrett isn't here. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. I'd like to move on to item number 3, which is public comment. I understand we've just got one member of the public wanting to speak, Terry Stock, who's wanting to speak towards item 5B in relation to the proposed bus changes at stop 9214, and we've also got Marie Stock. So you're both welcome to join us at the table, and you've got a couple of minutes each, but if you want to speak together, you can obviously combine that time as well. So please join us at the table. Okay, and if you just push that right-hand button on the microphone, we'll be able to hear you, and then we'll see if there's any questions at the end. Thank you.
Start. My name is Marie Stock. Terry and I have lived at 135 Major Drive, Kelson for 48 years. There are many reasons why we have remained in Kelson, including its easy access and the fact that there is on-road parking in front of our home. The revised decision to relocate bus stop 9214 was unbelievable. After 45 years as a safe bus stop, the original stop was no longer acceptable. The loss of parking in front of our property will greatly affect family, friends and service people. We have a steep, narrow driveway which people find difficult to negotiate. On several occasions, the house has been damaged by overconfident service people, so we prefer that their vehicles remain on the road. The neighbouring properties at 133, 137 and 139 also have steep driveways. Unfortunately, there will be inconvenience wherever the bus stop is located. However, the properties at 121, 123, 125 and 127 by the existing bus stop, and as first proposed, have flat areas in front of their houses and thus off-road parking for service people, etc. And if you'd like to just turn to the illustrations on the back, you can see from 121 to 129 how it is flat at that area, and those people can just park straight onto the front of their property. But if you look at the bottom picture, you can see that you go straight down. There's nowhere to park on your property, and I think there's a service vehicle at 133 when this photo was taken. Although you had been told there are parks in the area, we would be competing with them with other neighbours with similar sections. On-road parking is precious to us, and as yet we have not heard any compelling reasons for the shift. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Marie and Terry. We really appreciate you coming in and sharing your thoughts. Do any members have any questions? Awesome, thank you so much. So your questions. Yep, Terry, you want to add something? Go ahead.
Just to draw your attention to, I made a written submission for consideration of the committee on the 28th of August, and I'd like you to consider that. I was surprised after the previous meeting, we were wondering what was going on, whether there had been any developments, and I looked up your agenda, and sure enough, there's a another variation to the proposal 2. Out of the blue, no reference to us, no reference to any other neighbours, and in summary, as I ended my submission, which you will have in front of you somewhere, there's been no compelling reason for the change in location. They talk about making it safer, and I can't understand on how that's achieved. The second one is that if it really did need to go ahead, why do those extra parking restrictions need to be imposed? And secondly, if it did go ahead, do we really need a concrete pad outside our place when we don't need a concrete pad anywhere else in the world? We could have talked about those if they'd come back to us. They haven't come back to us. But basically, why the shift? There's no grounds for it. If you could give us a really good reason, rather than mysterious off slogans, would be useful. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Terry. And we'll obviously get our traffic engineers to speak to this item when it comes up, which will be not too far through the agenda. We've got a question from Councillor Briggs.
Just a question for yourself, Chair, if you're comfortable moving the agenda items around of precedence of business so we can deal with this item first while we've got our speakers here, so they can actually listen to the feedback from officers and the reasons why these are proposed changes as well.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I'll get onto that once we finish question time, but good suggestion to bring that forward. Just one question from me. Obviously, the proposed plans in front of us today are slightly different than the ones that came to the last committee. I know you're not in favour in it at all, but the new proposal, is that slightly better or slightly worse for you than the previous one? If you could just push the button on the microphone. Thank you.
I think I covered that in my submission, which I asked officers to forward to you. They have slightly moved the yellow dotted lines on the bus box. The change also includes the 2 L bars. Why? They talk about, I need to look at, it talks about just to stop people parking on the bus approach. Well, the bus approach has got those yellow lines to protect it. So why does 131 need those white bars? It's just a mystery. Again, if we've been some talk about it, we might have had it all explained to us. Cool. We shouldn't be here at your level dealing with this trivia.
Cool. Thank you, Terry.
Trivia as far as big council is concerned.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Cool. So we'll get our officers to obviously speak to the item when it comes up. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to bring forward item 4B. We'll do, just to keep it a bit easier for everyone in the room, we will go through item 5B in the correct order, and then we'll go back to 5A. So we'll still go through all the bus stops within the 5B report, noting that your particular bus stop is the last one on that, but I can't see the other bus stops taking very long. So we'll bring it forward a bit so you don't have to sit around wasting all your afternoon in here. We'll get onto it as quickly as possible. So I'd like to, do I have to move a recommendation? Cool. So I'd like to move a recommendation that we bring forward item 5B. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Briggs. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. Cool. So we'll move on to item 5B, which is on page 26 of the agenda. And I'd like to ask officers to join us at the table. Are you comfortable over there? Yep. Cool. Awesome. So thank you. Hand over to John now, Head of Transport.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou. So just in relation to the bus stop paper, so I will hand over to Bob for any technical questions or any design questions that that members may have. Otherwise, we'll take the paper as read. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor and Mary and Terry. Great to see you here again. So I'll quickly explain that. Firstly, the reason for reallocating the bus stop, as we explained early on, as the current bus stop sitting at next to number 125 Major Drive, with the current location. Firstly, there's no safe standing position for people, especially people with wheelchair and prime pushchairs. So therefore, that we need a safer place for people to stand waiting for the bus to get on and off the bus safely. Secondly, is with the new bus stop safety review processes and also the potential of bringing high capacity buses, then we need bigger size of bus stop areas as well as safe bus put in and put out areas as intra-taper and exiting taper, as the current location at 125. Then, so firstly, where people standing current now is on a residence driveway. Secondly, is it doesn't have any space that can allow for intra-taper and exit taper, as well as there's a structure before the bus stop that will make the bus very hard to put in. On top of that, then that's sitting at a middle of T intersection, so that considered very unsafe. Officers has been considered number of locations and also working with some of the communities there. And also we literally bring a physical bus to go around there to testing different locations. So therefore that conclusion was made as a recommendation that the current location is recommended to be most convenient as well as safe location to be allocated there. And then also to respond some of your previous questions, then we want to keen to clarify those, being the first one being the contact that I believe council officers has been trying to contact last week, but unfortunately we couldn't get in touch with yourself. I understand that council officer has been getting in touch Monday this week. Yeah, the second thing regarding to the concrete pad, that we need to have a flat and safer space for people to stand on. So therefore, a concrete pad is needed for the wheelchair. And then also the parking L bars. Those parking L bars, they are wide bars, so they are not parking restrictions. So they are really advisory line markings to help people to say where's the safe parking space. Yeah, so that's basically everything from me.
And do you have any comments to make about the curb height difference between the old bus stop and the proposed bus stop location?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, the old curb height, also because that's on the driveway, access way. So that's not safe for the bus to kneel down to be flat for wheelchair and people with pram chairs to push in. So that's the other reason that why we need a concrete pad in front of the new proposed bus stop location.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're not able to ask questions during this part of the meeting. Do any members have questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just a couple of questions of clarification for me, Bob. And one is what the light blue square is. Is it a concrete pad or is it a shelter or is it?
Yep, that's a concrete pad.
Just the open concrete pad?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one regards to Mr. Stock's written submission that he sent in, where one of the things he talked about is the crossing not being a pedestrian crossing. I assume because it doesn't have a zebra crossing marking, but I notice it has the same yellow lines before and after that the pedestrian crossing in the illustration he's seen do in the approach there. And I was just wondering, does it have, what kind of status does that have as a road crossing?
Yeah, for that particular location, that is a pedestrian crossing, and as you correctly point out, that is kind of not a zebra crossing, but it is a safer crossing point that we're trying to provide to the community.
So for all intents and purposes, we treat it the same as we would treat a zebra crossing.
That's correct, yeah.
Do any other members have any questions? So just to clarify, any questions about this particular item, which is all 5 of the bus stops we are looking at today. I'll just ask one with regards to the yellow lines, the entry taper, why the yellow lines weren't proposed to go over the driveways of 131 and 133 before obviously you can't park across the driveway anyway, but did those residents not want yellow lines there, or have we just not done it?
Yeah, so for the current broken yellow lines, then we just keep that as the minimum 9 meters to incorporate buses. We can extend that to cover the driveway if the resident would like to have it. But as you correctly point out, Councillor, that we don't need to provide broken yellow lines for access ways because people are not allowed to park there anyway.
But we haven't had that conversation yet with 131 or 133.
No, we haven't.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, and my other question was just regarding another bus stop, which is the one on Rata Street in Nainai. It's on page 31. And I know this stop quite well. It's just around the corner from my house, and the property there at 117 and the property to the right of it, which is actually number 1 Rimu Street, are both about to change quite drastically from what's in the Google photograph there, with some quite intensive townhouse developments. So I was just wondering whether those future developments have been taken into account in designing this new bus stop.
Yep, Councillor, yeah. For my understanding, firstly is Metlink and Regional Council, they are developing plans as well as incorporating with the forecast demand around that area for providing bus services and bus frequencies. So based on my understanding of for other bus service and frequency and capacity designs, they have considered future growth, but whether that's specific development growth that occurring now or in the future, then that's the part that I cannot confirm.
Yeah, and my question isn't really about meeting the growth demand, it's about the layout of the street there, because potentially it's going to change quite significantly. I'm not sure of the exact plans for those properties, but I do know that there's some intensive developments going on both of those properties right there.
Right, yeah, I see, Councillor, yeah, for that particular property, and also their development, so we, I believe they have been working together on that bus stop, yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Bob. Just a question is about where the previous bus stop was sited. Was it looked at that the curb height for wheelchair access, was that a simple solution, or was there more to it, just to raise the height of that where it was before, or is that not viable for this particular instance?
Yeah, so the most practical solution is basically to bring that the same height at the curb height as the buses will be able to nail down, and then with the bus at the current location at 125, that's basically in front of driveway, so we cannot bring a flat surface for wheelchair.
Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Just the officers around bus stop 9214 Major Drive. So from what I've heard, obviously we had this paper come to us a few times now, and a few amendments each time. And thank you to Marie and Terry for coming in each time and presenting their perspective. My question around it is, this is just fundamentally around safety versus amenity, correct? And just to give me reassurance from the officers that this move is purely for the safety and well-being of road users and public transport users to be able to access the bus safely. Is that correct? And is there anything else you want to elaborate on?
That is correct, yeah.
Any other questions from any other members? No? Cool, we'll just bring up the recommendations, which are on page 26. So I'd like to move the recommendations on page 26, 1 through 7. I won't read through them all, but they're up on the screen in front of us. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. Any members wishing to speak? Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Just speaking to the item, I just asked the questions about bus stop 9124 Major Drive, and acknowledging again both Marie and Terry for coming in, and acknowledging that these recommendations do remove parking directly outside your house, and this will have some amenity loss, and the challenges that may come for you and your family and guests. For me, always on this committee, it comes down to safety. And safety is paramount, and acknowledging that the extra walk or two for your neighbours when they do park on the street side may be frustrating and annoying, and have an impediment on them coming to your place. But for me, fundamentally, having people being able to access public transport in a safe and reasonable way is key. And so therefore today I will be supporting all of the bus stop recommendations before us.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, on balance, this new proposed site is a lot safer, and that's really important, not just for the bus stop users, but for people crossing the road and for drivers as well. And the other part of it for me, and one of the reasons we're doing all of this, is for accessibility. So people with different abilities can use our public transport network as well. Because if those buses can't get in flush to the curb, and the curb's not of an appropriate height, then for someone in a wheelchair, that bus stop may as well not be there. And, you know, they don't have the same access to our public transport network as we want everyone to have. So, yeah, I agree that, you know, obviously any shift of a bus stop is going to cause inconvenience for someone. But on balance of safety and providing accessibility for a bus stop, which it sounds like may have been unusable for people in wheelchairs before now, that's an important change to make.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Shaw, you wishing to speak?
Yeah, I have some sympathy for you, and thank you very much for coming in today to speak to us. But I agree with my colleagues. I think safety has to be the primary reason here, and wheelchair access and accessibility for our wheelchair users is paramount in this particular case. But thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. I'll just finish briefly. I really do want to acknowledge you that this will have some amenity loss to right outside your house, and do thank you for engaging with us and coming along to the meeting today. But as everyone's kind of said, it really is the balance of safety, and this will make it safer for bus users. And yeah, and Councillor Mitchell is exactly right. If the bus can't get to the curb at the right level, it may as well not be there. So. And that's what this entire review of bus stops is about, is primarily focused on making it more safe and more accessible for everyone to use public transport. So I've moved it, I've had a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. Thank you again for coming in. Cool. So we'll move back to item number 4, conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts of interest? That's good. We'll now move on to item 5A, which is recommendations to council on the 4th of October, which is for the Groundsell Crescent traffic management proposed speed cushions. This is on page 5 of our agenda, and I invite John to take us through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we've had quite a number of complaints and to council over the last couple of years around not just illegal street racing, but just generally people speeding along Groundsell Crescent, and how unsafe it is for people walking or cycling or even pulling out of driveways. So whilst this paper will go some way to stopping the illegal street races from doing burnouts through there, it's much wider than this, and it's around the safety of all street users. And as just kind of noted there, it's everyday people driving that use that to speed up and accelerate, putting other people at risk. So hence coming to the subcommittee, seeking your approval for to install a couple of speed cautions as a way of trying to calm the traffic.
Thank you. Anything to add? There were some questions at the pre-agenda meeting around NZTA's future plans or past plans on the slip road. Obviously, they administer that. Have we had any feedback from them since then?
Yeah, Councillor, we have been contacting with NZTA to reconsider and also to incorporate with as part of their Stable 2 improvement projects and program. Yeah, so that's in a continuous discussion, as well as we'll be talking with Talk to look at that possible improvement or any safety review of that particular intersection, signal intersection as well. So that's going to be continuous discussion with them, and then we'll report back once we understand more clarity on that programs.
And there's nothing in the recommendations today that we would be doing that would make it harder for NZTA to do any of that in the future?
Not from today's recommendation.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I had a few, just having read over the paper, and I haven't used Groundsdale Crescent a lot personally, but I have used it a few times and can certainly see that there's a lot of safety issues along that street. So again, commend the officers for taking a safety first approach. One of the things mentioned in the paper in paragraph 9 is that Waka Kotahi's Megamaps website suggests an appropriate speed of 40 kilometres an hour. And that's one reason to have the speed humps. But I guess I was curious why the proposal isn't to reduce the speed limit as well, or instead of.
Thank you, Councillor. So yeah, we've treated them as two different issues. So at the moment, we're actually starting to pull together a speed management program, which we'll be briefing councillors on in a couple of weeks. So where we look at speeds across the city, and there's a new process that we need to go through for that, which we are working through. So the quickest way for us to reduce the speed through here and increase safety was to put in the speed humps. We will be looking at that road for a speed review, but we'll be working through on the highest priority roads through the city. So reducing the speed doesn't necessarily mean people will drop to 40. If we were to drop it to 40, this is a way to force people to slow down. So.
And another question I had was in the public feedback at the end. It seemed like there were an awful lot of people saying just close the slipway. And maybe from a comment Councillor Dyer made in introducing this paper, that's not a council thing, more of a Waka Kotahi thing. So I was just wondering if you could expand on that, explain that, please.
Yes. Yeah. So my understanding is previously NZT was exploring the possibility of closing that on-ramp, and then so I think with the process and some difficulties through consultation, so that one was put on hold. However, current now with NZT is developing a new program as Stable 2 to Featherstone safety improvement program. So therefore, this item will be able to reconsider this as part of that program. So that's the part that we are working closely with NTA on. Yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
I totally agree with the use of speed questions in this instance, but one of the negative responses suggested that it would be difficult for her baby to sleep if the question was placed outside her house. Now, I'm not saying that that would change where you might put the speed hump, but I just wonder if there's actually been any thought given to this. Speed humps are happening increasingly today. Is there an excessive increase in traffic noise with a car slowing down and or accelerating away? Has there been a study or thought given to that?
Yes, Councillor, basically when without speed cushions or speed humps, then when people speed up, then that'll still be noise. So the intention is with speed humps or speed cushions, then if people do not speed up aggressively, then in ideal world that there wouldn't be more noise than current now. And then and also the location of the speed cushions had been carefully considered as their spacing and as their location and distance to access ways and also safe driveways on there. And also the other thing that we also like to mention is the current speed cushions that is trying to slow down general vehicles with cushion of adjusted to a certain distance of the wheel axis. So therefore that especially for buses or trucks go through there, then that wouldn't have a more aggressive bump. Therefore that would be expected to be much less impact or less noise to bigger vehicles.
Just following on from Councillor Shaw's question, obviously there's two parts to it here. One is it's slowing the vehicles down, but it's also deterring people that are cutting out the traffic lights. Have we done any traffic counts or anything like that of how many cars are actually using this road to cut out the traffic lights at all as part of this process? Or obviously there are definitely some, but do we have any quantitative data?
Yeah, I believe traffic counts are available. Yeah, just unfortunately I'm not with me today. Yeah.
Cool, no further questions. Great, I'll move on to the recommendations, and they're on page 5. That the subcommittee recommends that council receives and notes the report and improves the implementation of up to 2 sets of proposed speed cushions on Groundsale Crescent. I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. Any members wishing to speak? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just to thank officers for their work on this and for their clarification at the meeting today. It sounds to me like it's a bit of a complicated situation with Kotahi being involved with the state highway and connections there, but that our council is doing what our council can do to quite quickly bring about some reduced speeds. So thank you. Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just acknowledging the work that officers are already doing around a citywide speed review. I think in the last few meetings we've been looking at speed cushions in areas that will have an impact, but being able to prioritise it across the whole city to make sure that the work program for the next couple of years aligns to the demand was going to be great. But also it's part of the citywide conversation around our road user behaviours. And how do we actually all collectively slow down? If all of us were driving safely and appropriately, we wouldn't need these interventions. But unfortunately, that isn't the case. So we need to make sure that we're getting the cultural change around our behaviours and patterns, as well as with the hard infrastructure when required to make sure that everyone's safe when on the road.
Thank you, Councillor Briggs. Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things, both good points so far. I'm sure it's already happening, but I hope we are working with NZTA and sharing what we're doing in the space. Obviously, they're reviewing the speeds as well. I think it would be really useful to go back to the residents that submitted. And firstly, I want to acknowledge the work you've done here with consulting the residents. There's a large number of comments here from them, and obviously being part of sharing that wide with people as well. It's yeah, just commend the officers on the consultation we have done on this. It's yeah, a testament to how many good responses we got from people of the work we were done. But I think it would be really beneficial to go back to residents, especially those that mentioned about just close the slip road, because I was really surprised at how many people were telling us to close the road. Usually it's the opposite way around. So the residents obviously acknowledge there is an issue, and actually just closing that slip road entirely would be the best outcome, which I kind of tend to agree with, but we understand that it's NZTA's land and we can't do anything about that. So I think it's important we go back to residents to actually let them know that we haven't just ignored their advice, we just can't do anything, but that we are working with NZTA and that they are reviewing the entirety of the State Highway 2 corridor, and then that obviously may change in the future. And as mentioned in my question as well, this isn't just about slowing down vehicles that are using the road, it's also about deterring cars that are using it to cut out the traffic lights. Yeah, so I've moved it, seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. Moving on to item 6 on page 37, which is the Traffic Subcommittee Forward Program for 2022. Anything officers wish to add to this? Or pretty self-explanatory. No, cool. Any questions? Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for John or Cutter around how much of this work plan at the moment is currently doable, knowing that your teams are busy around the city dealing with significant events from slips and other weather events, and how much of this, if any of it, will be deferred to a subsequent meeting as well.
Thank you, Councillor. So we are planning on doing all of it. Weather gets in the way sometimes, and as you've noted, we've actually had another large slip today in Korokoro, which has closed both lanes of that road, so we're dealing with that as well. So there is we are prioritising the resources we have at the moment, and aware that not only these, some of the smaller traffic improvements, but also things like potholes and other things across the city, we are prioritising and getting onto them. When we get new slips like today, that does take those resources away to have to deal with the more immediate stuff. But it is in the plan. We do think it's achievable at this stage. So,
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I appreciate that your particular department is really under the pump at the moment. But I'm just looking at the plan for future parking across the city and wonder if it's possible for it to be brought forward, because it's a current hot topic at the moment with housing intensification having an impact already. And late 2023 seems to be an awfully long way away. So just a thought if that's possible.
thank you, Councillor. So the parking is a large piece of work that will be a joint piece between ourselves and our policy team. It is going to take quite a period of time to do that and consult and bring it back. So realistically, I don't think earlier than 12 months is probably feasible, given the rest of the work program.
And just to add to that, Councillor Shaw, the parking policy and those pieces of work will be, as you would probably imagine, quite highly contentious in particular parts of our community as we start having conversations around increasing fees, residential parking zones, etc., etc., etc. So, they will be big, meaty conversations we'll be having with our community, and as a council, there will be significant matters for you guys to consider at that time.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendations on page 37. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. Any members wishing to speak? No, I'll just add something brief here. I just really want to thank officers and our contracting teams that are out on the road at the moment, particularly with the ongoing reactive work with the slips we're seeing around the country. And as you mentioned, John, Korokoro today's had another big slip. So you really do want to thank you, because I know you're going above and beyond at the moment, and we understand and appreciate that at the expense of some other work around the city. Obviously, this is our last traffic subcommittee as well for the triennium, so I do want to thank my fellow councillors for your work and input to this committee over the last 3 years. We're one of the smaller committees that kind of takes the workload off the other councillors that aren't on this committee, so you do really want to thank you for all your work over the last 3 years. Any other members wishing to speak before I move the recommendation? Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I'd just also like to acknowledge the work that you're doing, particularly in Stokes Valley. I'm a Stokes Valley resident. And so, the progress that has been made both north of the roundabout and south. Today, as I left to come down here, we had abseilers going down the hill. So really appreciate the fantastic work that you're doing and really, really testing and trying conditions at the moment. So thank you.
John, you wish to add something?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor. So so the abseilers are up under a couple of sites today and tomorrow at this stage, and we'll see how the progress gets made further from that. So, and there will be short periods where we have to close the road with bigger rocks coming down. which will enable us to progress quicker. But we're obviously safety first in that respect. So there may be, and this morning we had a State Highway 2 was closed, which caused quite a big build up back. Almost all the vehicles were using Eastern Hutt Road to come into Lower Hutt and even into Wellington. So, but that was a short-term thing, but just goes to reiterate the importance of Eastern Hutt Road as a vital lifeline route. So.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. So all those in favour, please say aye. All against? I declare that carried. Oh, I've pushed the wrong button. Moving on to item number 7, questions. I've received no questions. Moving on to item number 8, which is the closing karakia, if we could bring that up on the screen. Please join me. Unahia, 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 e te uru tapa nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua e te tātou, ko e rea rongo, whakakairi, aki te runga, kia wātia, ai rā kua waitia, hau pai mārie. Kia ora, thank you everyone.